What the hell is going on?
Donnie, what's going on is you are still obsessed with that silly wall, that call and response thing that you had going at your safe space rallies, with those drooling yeehaws in the Make America White Again hats. What are we going to build? A wall. Who's going to pay for it? Mexico. Still going on about that. And now it's not going to be a wall, it's going to be a see-through fence, or maybe a line, or an idea. And Mexico isn't going to pay for it, America's going to pay for it. But apart from that, he didn't lie in any way, shape or form. He released a statement, it said, just say no, Nancy. Hey, Nancy, just say
no.
Meanwhile, Mrs M has been giving it to the evil EU, demanding that they capitulate and give us everything that we want. She has successfully changed her demands to make it impossible for the EU to refuse. She's gone back to the EU with the exact same demands, expecting them to change their minds. We're doomed. Despite her own plan being defeated by MPs, Mrs M apparently made no changes to her Brexit demands when she talked to EU leaders on the telephone. It's just the stuff that is going on in this world. I mean, is this real life or am I hallucinating? So she rang them up on the telephone, like Blondie, and they knew she was calling and put her on hold.
Please hold the line. I'm trying to connect you.
Yeah. Despite the historic defeat, by the small margin of a massive 230 votes, a source said the Prime Minister left EU diplomats in a state of disbelief over her failure to shift her stance. She just keeps saying the same thing over and over again. And EU leaders said, "What?" Couldn't believe it. They said that in French. Mrs M's requests continued to focus around either a legally binding time limit for the Irish backstop, a right for Britain to unilaterally withdraw from that backstop, or a commitment to a trade deal finalisation before 2021 to prevent that backstop from coming into force. Who even heard of such a thing called a backstop before David Cameron threw us all into this mess? Here's the problem. You can't have a time limit or an ability to unilaterally withdraw, because then it wouldn't be a backstop, a last-ditch insurance policy. And you can't have a time limit on coming up with a trade deal by 2021, because even though that date does sound like it's from a sci-fi film about the future, it's just 2 years away. Trade deals take 7 years. And does anybody think that we could beat the average for doing deals?
Negative.
I mean, can you imagine how long it would take this government to play a game of Monopoly? They'd be dead of old age before they passed go. Continental plates move faster than that lot. So instead of changing her tune, she just sang the same old tune. The one that got her booed off stage the last time. No! And she repeated her demands in talks with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Dutch people, they look fantastic. I mean, let's not to beat around the bush, but they sound blooming awful. They sound like the cats coughing up a fur ball. No offence. They say it best when they say nothing at all. So Mark Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, got it in the ear, and so did Angela Merkel, the long-suffering German Chancellor, and the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Irish spelling mistake, Leo Varadkar. All right, then you spell it. Taoiseach. Go ahead. I double dare you. You try it.
Taio.
No, incorrect. You fail. Well, at least according to what I've got in the paper, because this could be a spelling mistake. It just looks like Scrabble letters randomly plucked out of a bag. So a source with detailed knowledge of the calls that Mrs M had desperately been sending around, ringing up her European counterparts, I'm being told that they're too busy, they can't come to the phone right now. Can you leave a message? A source with the knowledge of these calls said it was the same old story, the same set of demands, all unchanged despite her defeat. Which means that her office leaks like a sieve. Or that the other leaders are running straight to the press in order to alert us poor dopes that the Empress has no clothes. Mrs M's standing there in nothing but a fetching pair of tiger print slingbacks.
Disgusting.
So the EU is sticking by its word that the deal is done. And Mrs M is sticking to her request that they reopen the deal, because if at first you don't succeed, keep doing the same thing over and over. Oh, that's bound to work.
Yeah.
And the Dutch leader said the deal can't be tweaked, and the German leader said the deal can't be tweaked, and the French leader said the deal can't be tweaked. Which part of the word non, nein and niet don't you understand, Mrs M? Meanwhile, back home, ministers in her government are prepared to defy her and vote for a backbench plan to give MPs power to block a no-deal Brexit. Finally, the grown-ups are about to take charge. What great relief all round. I can hear you sigh. Tory MP Nick Bowles told the BBC, sold some down-market broadcasting company that it was probably LBC, that not a down-market broadcasting company, told them that some non-cabinet ministers had told him directly, Nick Bowles, that they would quit if whipped. No whipping. If they were whipped against a bill allowing parliamentarians to demand Article 50 be extended for fresh talks with Brussels. What's the point? Brussels don't want to talk anymore. They've talked their faces off. Article 50 being extended. Does anybody want more of this?
No.
I think if we can agree on one thing, if this country can come together in unanimity about one issue, it is that we don't want to talk about this anymore. But we will, from now until the end of time, because one way or the other, it's going to be at the top of the news. Forever. Thanks a lot, David Cameron. So Tory MP Nick Bowles says that some parliamentarians, some cabinet ministers yet, have told him that they will quit. They say, that's it, we're leaving. If they are forced to vote if they're forced to let me get this straight, because this is really important. They've told him directly that they would quit if whipped against a bill allowing parliamentarians to demand that Article 50 be extended for fresh talks with Brussels. And that's what the government would be likely to do. Whip 'em! They love a bit of it. But Commons leader Andrea Leadsom said that colleagues who want to stop no deal wrongly think that they know better than voters. What the voters know, you could write on the back of a blue British passport with a paint roller. I had a bloke on this show yesterday that said that Jean-Claude Juncker was the Emperor of Europe. Leadsom said parliamentarians are the servants of the people. Well, in theory. She said the people gave us a very direct answer to a direct question. We must leave the EU, she said. No, they didn't give you a direct answer. As we now know, they gave us a multiplicity of answers, depending on who it was that was doing the crossing in the box. Some people thought one thing and others a completely different thing. It wasn't direct. I mean, it was a very narrow win, and all the polls suggest that this country does not approve of the way that we're going. I mean, if those Brexiteer ultra-fundamentalists are really interested in democracy, they'd welcome a second referendum to decide the nature of our leaving. Who wouldn't want a second referendum?
We should have a second referendum.
But they aren't interested in democracy unless it gives them what they want, which is why they're clinging onto this so desperately. Andrea Leadsom said, no deal is not the desired outcome, but if we rule out no deal, we can forget about the EU taking us seriously. Oh, Andrea, I think that boat sailed. That boat's going down. Andrea Leadsom said, the will of the people is not something that should be redefined by parliamentarians who think they know better and want to pursue their own agenda. Well, first of all, parliamentarians are supposed to know better than us poor dopes. That's why we pay them the big money. That's why they're there to represent us. If we wanted people as stupid as we are, then we would have elected them. We'd have made our preference clear. They're supposed to be more intelligent than we are, more worldly and wise. That's why they're running the show. Don't ask us to do it. We can barely tie our own shoelaces without supervision. Hang on, I'm going to cough. That's better. I mean, it's hard to know who she's talking about there. Parliamentarians think that they know better and want to pursue their own agenda. Is she talking about Jacob? Is she talking about Boris? Is she talking about herself? 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's at LBC. Friday and Saturday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC.
This is LBC.
Hello, boys.
Eva says, just think for a moment how much anti-Brexit tripe has been pushed in every sphere known to man, even during the referendum and leave, having won the referendum, still have to fight just because they won the vote. Unbelievable. Well, you're right, Eva, it is unbelievable. I recognise all the letters of the alphabet that you've used there, just not in that order. What are you talking about? But it fits right in. Just think for a moment how much anti-Brexit tripe has been pushed in every sphere known to man, even during the referendum and leave, having won the referendum, still have to fight just because they won the vote. Unbelievable. Does that make sense?
No.
Please tell me you didn't vote, Eva. Paul says eventually Mrs M will stop saying the same thing over and over and over again. The batteries will run out. Well, perhaps, yeah. And this text says, I'm all right in thinking that you push on air a political bias to the left. Just asking, that's all. What, as opposed to Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nick Ferrari? As opposed to them, you mean? Of course, they don't push a political bias at all. Goodness me, no. Why would anybody think that? This notion that the entire human race is now defined by whether they're either left or right is just so utterly ridiculous. It's childish. It's just beyond infantile. I can barely conceive that adults can even think that way, let alone say it out loud. How can you define yourself as either left or right? That just defines yourself as a non-thinking person. I mean, come on. You think that every single issue that you are a left or right-wing person? That means you haven't thought about anything. I'm a right-wing person when it comes to somebody parking across my driveway, for instance. I think that those people should be treated with the full extent of the law. But I'm a more liberal, small L person when it comes to people doing whatever they want, as long as it doesn't interfere with anybody else's happiness. Now, that's both left and right, isn't it? You should be able to do anything you like as long as it doesn't interfere with anybody else's happiness or pleasure or their happiness and pleasure covers pretty much all of it, doesn't it? I mean, ask me about individual issues and I will come to a considered opinion, or just a snap judgment might be more like it. But it might not necessarily be either left or right. I mean, I'm no giant brain, but at least I do think about things. I don't just immediately spurt out the response that constitutes to being either left-wing or right-wing. People, I don't think that we should be allowed to vote at all. I think grown-ups should be instructed to do it for us. I mean, Eva, her considered response to all of this so far, I mean, I've read it twice. Shall I read it again?
No.
We're following those people. I think we've made a big mistake. We better think it out again. Here's a call in beautiful downtown Greenwich. Hello, David.
Oh, hello, Nick. You okay?
So
Hello?
far, yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question, David.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question. No,
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay, actually. I think it might have been yourself. I don't know. It was quite, maybe even a year ago. You were talking about the Americans made a trade deal with Europe.
Did they?
But apparently...
Which one?
Well, the Americans made a trade deal with the EU.
Yeah, which one? What, were you talking about TTIP?
probably. Look, I'm not.
Yeah, let's not get bogged down in details. Just get to the to the query. What's your query?
Well, the Americans made a deal. It was worth something that I think it was 145 billion pounds or something like that.
So it sounds like a figure you just pulled out of the air. But let's not quibble.
No. I think it was
145 billion pounds. Yes, peanuts. Go ahead.
Discuss this, yeah. But we seem to have this attitude that we can suddenly make trade deals in, what, we leave and we make trade deals just like that.
Well, if you think David Davis knows what he's talking about, then it will be the easiest thing in the world. The easiest trade deal in history will be between us and Europe, because the deal of exiting is going so very well and quickly.
But, no, I do sort of think about trade.
Do you?
And look, I'm retired. Right.
Oh, you've got a lot of time on your hands. Yeah, of course.
Yes, of course. No, but I think that, talk about the Americans having to make a trade deal with Europe, and it took them years, apparently. And so did Canada. It took them years, apparently. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Am I right or wrong?
And then the Screaming Mimi had one of his famous fits and threw it out the window, because the previous administration had its fingerprints all over it.
But do you think that we're going to easily make trade deals?
Easily, no.
That's what people think we're just going to walk out of Europe and start making trade deals with Australia.
Well, people who think that don't know what they're talking about. You have to remember that, David. And there's a lot of that about. Because people are willfully... It's not that they're... I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm saying they're ignorant in the best possible way. But they're willfully ignorant. They refuse to learn anything. I mean, it's been almost 3 years now, and nobody has learned a thing. Like I said, I was talking to a guy last night who actually thought there was an emperor of Europe. That's the person we're following. We've decided to follow that guy.
Well, the German. Sorry, I've been facetious. But I do sort of worry about trade, because it's not going to be easy as people think it is.
Well, any negotiation is a pain in the neck. If you've ever done one, David, it's just it's a nightmare, because everybody wants their own thing. And if you're talking about a trade deal from a country, you don't go to another country and say, you put 5% on your stuff and I'll put 5% on my stuff, and that's it, and we'll shake on it. You go through every little thing that your country exports and imports, and you say, well, I'll give you 3.5% on wheat, and I'll give you 4.5% on machinery, and then for 6% on medicines and pharmaceuticals. It just takes forever.
That's what I'm saying. People seem to think we can just leave Europe and start making trade deals all over the world. It's not going to work, is it?
Plus, Europe's right there, and these famous trade deals that we're going to be negotiating with Australia, well, you'd have to leave the planet to get further away. What are these people talking about?
I don't know. I don't want to tell you which way I voted, but...
well, as long as you voted.
It's all very confusing, actually. To be honest.
It's a little bit confusing, yes.
But...
but as long as you don't take on board any facts, David, you'll be just fine.
I like facts.
Do you? No, I don't think you can. I don't think anybody is invested in facts anymore. Everybody gets to make their own facts up these days.
Yeah. But,
schooling is over.
I mean, it's very confusing, actually.
Yeah. Get Alice Cooper on the phone, and he'll explain that to us. School's out.
It's so funny. But I know you don't like history.
Oh, history?
Boring!
I'd rather double geography than history.
If you look at history, people have always followed the trade routes.
Yeah, that's true.
So, what are we going to do?
Well,
Yes.
we'll take a magical mystery tour to nowhere. How does that actually sound?
Groovy.
Yeah, I'd like that right now. All aboard?
Anyway.
All right, thanks a lot, David. Grip onto something tight. Ding, ding. I swear the best sound in the world was... I must have mentioned this on the air before, and I haven't heard it since I was a child. The best sound in the world ever was the noise that the ticket machine used to make on a bus. That thing that the conductor had slung around his neck, which looked like it weighed a ton, actually. It must have caused many a spinal malformation. Where they zipped that little handle around on the outside and tore the ticket off and proffered it to you, and then you rolled it up really tight and stuck it in the bit in the back of the seat, which between the wood and the metal part. There's millions of them in there now in those old buses in scrapyards. But that sound that ticket machine used to make is the best sound in the world ever. I won't take any argument. Julian says, you're right about one thing. We voted to leave for a number of reasons. However, what we all agreed on was to leave the EU. No, we did not all agree to do that. It was won by a tiny minority, a tiny majority, rather, which represented a minority of the population. It was not what we all agreed on. He says, politicians are supposed to be cleverer than us, but we found that this is also wrong. Well, I'm not sure that's true, Julian. He says, they're all dopes that couldn't negotiate anything. Well, I mean, poor Mrs. M, she was given a turd sandwich by her predecessor, and she just had to fashion lunch out of it. I do feel a little bit sorry for her. This tweet says, can you report on the People's Revolution happening tonight in the EU-France state? Or are you too busy with your pro-Remain Brexit bias? Hashtag MSM fail. Oh, God. People, please, stop reading the internet. It's affecting your minds. I mean, as the moment that you hear MSM, which stands for mainstream media, all I'm hearing from you is blithering idiots. No, you don't want to pay attention to the news media. You want to get your information from Facebook, because, that's where the truth is. Like that woman I had last night who was going on and on and on about all these conspiracy theories that she had read on Facebook. Utterly convinced she was. Oh, the CIA has killed JFK. Well, yeah, of course they're bound to have done. The CIA and JFK and The Sopranos.
Absolutely.
It's all out there, and it's all crazy. There's a people's revolution happening tonight in France. Yeah, I very much doubt it. It's just a bunch of people who don't want to pay tax. It's as simple as that. We grumble while saying mustn't grumble. That's our national character. The French national character is at any impediment, you start picking up the cobblestones and chucking them at gendarmes. That's what they do. But it's not by and large what we do. So if they're rioting in the streets, it don't really mean nothing, other than, like in this country and every other first world country on earth, there's a large number of people who went through school to learn trades that are no longer required. That's called progress. Now, if you want to stop progress, then pick a year. Which year would you like? But you have to, but that year that you pick, you also have to rely on the medical technology of that year. So be careful which one you pick. I mean, if you want progress, then you have to realise that the skills that are required will change too. I mean, it used to be that the skills that were required were operating a spinning jenny. But sadly, those jobs are gone to be replaced by better jobs, which not everybody can do. And as I keep saying, we concentrate on the minutiae of Brexit, which is like moving grains of sand around, while behind us a tsunami wave of change is coming our way. Everybody's about to get fired, and no one's doing anything about it because the government can't think of anything to do. It's too late. To change people into the skills that are going to be required in the in the new world, which will be arriving maybe this year, next year, certainly in 5 years, will have to have been learned at school. And so everybody that is either in school now or has just recently left school or has gone through university and learned to be an accountant or a lawyer or any of these things, well, I'm sorry, but you've learned the wrong thing. Now, it's not your fault, but that's progress. It's the same down the years. Every revolution of any kind always has a large number of people who are inconvenienced, to put it lightly. But trying to make the clock turn back won't work. 0345 6060 973, Friday and Saturday night at 10, Nick Abbot, LBC, just past 10:30, the news headlines with Zora Sullivan.
Donald Trump says he's trying to find a way to...
I'm taking you off the air. I think you're having a breakdown.
Well, who can blame me? Julian says you're right. Oh, no, I read that one. Rob says, is it too late to call in Basil Brush to sort Brexit out? What? I don't get that. Basil Brush? Well, how about the flower pot men could do it? Maybe we should get Luby Lou on the case. Do you understand what that means? You're way too young to understand what... Do you even know who Basil Brush is?
Yeah, they brought it back a few years ago.
Did they?
Yeah.
Basil Brush Mark II. Well, that's not my Basil Brush. Basil Brush is going to be the new James Bond, by the way. Hey, you might want to park your car for the foreseeable future, because Prince Philip has been spotted behind the wheel again. The Chuki Embra has been photographed behind the wheel of his brand new Land Rover just 2 days after flipping his car. What? The Mail Online's got photos of the Chuk 97, who can be seen driving into the main entrance gate at the Sandringham estate today, on his own, without a seatbelt.
Oh, no.
Yeah, less than 48 hours after his car somersaulted across the road after colliding with a Kia on the A149 in Babingley in Norfolk. And Her Majesty the Queen was later pictured driving on a public road little more than a mile from the scene of the accident without a seatbelt. Under UK law, it is compulsory to wear a seatbelt if there is one fitted. Guilty! Except she isn't, because the Queen is immune from any civil or criminal proceedings. I'm not saying she's above the law. It's just that she's above the law. Buckingham Palace insists that the monarch was careful to ensure she privately complied with the law. No, she doesn't. It emerged last night that a 9-month-old boy and 2 women were in the car that hit the Prince's vehicle as he pulled out onto a main road near the Queen's Sandringham estate in Norfolk. The Duke passed a police eyesight test on Saturday, a source confirmed. Yeah, the police checked that he was a member of the royal family with their eyes, and he passed. However, he's now facing a police probe over the accident, which could lead to a charge of dangerous driving, and his driving licence being taken from him. Oh, please. No, it won't. Can we just skip to the part where they say, not guilty? And as is normal, a replacement Land Rover Freelander bearing his distinctive number plate was delivered to him yesterday. And you probably have the same experience from your insurer.
Yeah.
Get him off the road. 034...
His Majesty is the most marvellous driver. He really is absolutely impeccable and wonderful. Anybody says otherwise...
Let's have... I had no idea I was going to do that. Sutton. Hello, Felix.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
So, I wanted to pick up on one of your previous callers. It was just before you went to the break. And kind of how concerned he was about future trade deals with the rest of the world.
Yes.
I just think this completely emphasises how the government has completely failed to reassure the public that going forward with any future Brexit deal, or that of no Brexit deal, is going to secure this country's future amongst other nations.
Well, they can't soothe our worried brow because they don't know either.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. And I think I work for Conservatives for a People's Vote, and we were discussing just the other day about how there needs to be a referendum on whatever deal the government provide for us now in the next couple of weeks, because at the end of the day, like this gentleman was saying, he's completely confused about what kind of trade deals we're going to have around the world. There needs to be a reassurance. And the government needs to be reassured that they're going to have the support of the public. I think the only way that we're going to get this kind of reassurance is through a second referendum.
Okay, what's the question going to be?
Well, I wanted to ask you, what do you think would be the best way forward? Because, of course, you're a staunch anti-Brexiteer, and so I would like to. I kind of want to hear your opinion on what you think the best way forward is about this.
But you're doing this for, is it a living or is it a pastime?
I'd say a living.
So you're a professional, I don't know, how would you describe yourself?
I'm 19 years of age.
19 years of age?
Yeah.
You made it.
But I'd say that I do this for a living. I'm hugely passionate about politics. And,
right. But don't you represent an organisation that has a position on this?
I do. We do. We have a very clear position.
Right.
But I want to hear your opinion on it.
Well, I'm not necessarily for a second referendum, and I'm not necessarily for not leaving. I'm for whatever would be best for most of the people in this country. I just don't believe, I have not been convinced that the fundamentalist Brexiteer ultras are acting in the best interests of the country. It rather looks to me like they're acting in the best interests of themselves, either it be for their political careers or that I firmly believe a considerable number of them have got bets against the economy of the country. They're betting against the pound. A lot of the money is coming from millionaires and billionaires who do financial finagling for a living. And if they don't have positions against the pound while trying to drag us out of the EU in the most what's the word I'm looking for? In the most dramatic way, which would cause an economy to dip at least in the short term, then they would be probably poor at their job if they hadn't taken financial bets against the country. And if that's what they're doing, then that to me is treason.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you say you're not in favour of a second referendum.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that anybody who is sure at this point about their position is somebody who has not thought about their position for probably about 3 years now. I think the entire country made a snap decision based on no information of any kind and then has refused point blank to take on board any information in the interim period and have just stuck with their original opinion, which is just a ridiculous way to run a country. For politicians to say that we must abide by a decision which may or may not have been brought to us courtesy of Russian internet bots. We don't know. Our government refuses to look into it. It's incredible what's going on. But if we do have a second referendum, then it must be either whatever deal Parliament comes up with in the next week,
correct,
or staying in the EU.
I see. My position used to be that I was very much against the second referendum because I thought it would just be a rerun of the first one and it would just disenfranchise more political voters that probably haven't even voted in years. But I'll tell you what really changed me was hearing the effect it would have on people's lives, and this is why I wanted to come on this evening to ask your perspective because you're well known, and I think you've got some great influence. And I think it would be
no, in both instances. But anyway, go on.
To listeners anyway. But what I'd like to say is that what changed my mind was the effect that I saw that it was going to have on the people of the United Kingdom, and the fact that they were duped in 2016 to vote for something that was completely fabrical. And I think that what we're moving towards now and what we've seen is that there's a huge swing that we could actually have a referendum on the final deal.
Well, so what's your organisation's position on the questions?
So we're from a Conservative point of view, we definitely think that it should be the government's deal, which whatever they come up with.
Yeah.
And then Remain should definitely also be on the ballot paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've also discussed as to whether maybe perhaps no deal should also be on the
Right.
ballot.
So 3 questions. Now you understand that if there's going to be 3 questions, there's no way you're going to get more than 52% on any question, which will invalidate that referendum in the eyes of a good number of people, those who have managed to cling on to life in the intervening period. It's going to severely upset them. For the rest of what is for what short period of time they have left in their life.
Well, I mean, look, any result's going to upset the majority of the United Kingdom.
Exactly.
My concern is, of course, doing the right thing for the United Kingdom, and my opinion is that a people's vote will help settle this argument. Maybe not completely, but it will help settle it for the time being, and that this country can actually move forward in making progressive policy in Parliament and actually starting to implement policy that's going to help people's livelihoods. At the moment, you've got businesses all around the country which are sitting on the edge of their seat, not knowing whether or not they're going to have workers next year to actually do the jobs they need doing, or whether they're going to be able to freely ship products to and from Germany and France and the rest of the European Union.
Exactly. What a way to run a country, eh? And as a young Conservative, Felix, I have to say that some of the blame lays on your shoulders.
Of course it does, absolutely. Of course it does. And but the reality is that an awful lot of us own up to that. And at the end of the day, stronger and were weak during the referendum. We've got to hold our hands up to that. But we want to we want to now show that there is nothing conservative about Brexit. It's anti-business. It's anti-trade. It's anti-freedom of movement, which of course helps.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a bizarre position that we're in now. The Conservative Party are arguing for everything that they've always argued against.
Well, exactly.
It's madness.
And if you look, and historically, if you look back to the 1940s up until today, the Conservative Party have always implemented a fairly pro-European stance in that they want to integrate themselves further with Germany and France through economic means. And now, all of a sudden, we have a Conservative Party led by a Remainer who is wanting to backtrack on all of that and do all the great work that John Major, Thatcher, and Winston Churchill did years ago in trying to bring us closer to allies which we've been fighting with for years beforehand.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that the people that you just mentioned are spotless in that regard, but I'm going to have to leave it there because I'm past the break. But thanks a lot, Felix. Cheers, mate. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, email nick@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, you're probably wasting your life.
LBC and its sister stations.
I just want to tell you all how happy I am to be back in the studio, making a picture again.
Yeah, it's a radio show, dear. Zach says, aren't T-tips those things that you stick in your ear? Yes, Zach. Yes, they are. Simon in Windsor says, can you tell David Cameron that we're still not missing him? Oh, he knows. He knows. And Jimmy in Colchester says, if we leave the EU without a deal, can we send the foreigners back to their country, like Prince Philip back to Greece and the Queen back to Germany? You know, there's a fella in the that was reported in the Mail today, underneath the story of Prince Philip, spotted behind the wheel of his brand new car. Yes. A man claims that as a boy he was in a car with his father in the 1990s, and he was run off the road near Sandringham Estate by Prince Philip, who then gave his dad the finger. Now, does that sound believable?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Prince Philip's just a rude old man who's never been corrected. Get him off the road. And I mean that with the greatest respect. Here's calling Tottenham. Hello, Saul.
Oh, hello. 1 second.
Yes, Saul.
Oh, hello?
Yes,
can
sir.
you hear me?
I can now.
Oh, fantastic. 1 second. I was just listening to you and doing something else at the same time.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for taking my call.
Hands above the table, please, Saul.
I've been listening to your show the last couple of days. I thought I'd give a bell because I voted to Remain, but
Ramon. I think it's pronounced Ramon.
Yes. It's just I had to think when I put the vote, and I had to seriously sort of think about it, why I'm voting Remain. And there were quite personal reasons to me. I sort of thought about all the things around me and my family situation, my wife, and I have big Italian connection with my family. And then I travel around the UK a lot for my work, and I take my time to talk to people, everyone from just buying the local, fried egg sandwich on the motorway to go talk to people in the schools.
Don't do it, Saul.
I know, but it's quite an amazing slice of society when you sit there and just eat your sandwich in peace and quiet, listen to people chat.
Oh yeah,
especially around the time of the vote.
Well, Alan Bennett made an entire career out of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I just. I also feel that we have a system in this country which is first past the post. I mean, we've seen it. Even one wins. We've seen it just recently with one person wins. Even if one person wins, Theresa May is going to stay through. We have this. We have this steadfast, respected system, and it's not proportional. And that's the way we do things here. And it's difficult to say to the argument if we're going to have a vote on something, you can't just change the whole system. It's like, it is what it is, and it's like, I feel like...
Well, you can't change the system until you change the system. I mean, it seems unchangeable until someone changes it. I think that we should change the system. I think that just gifting a monopoly of power to one party after another, and who will drag us in the opposite direction to that which we were moving for the previous 10 years, is no kind of way to run a country.
Yes, but I'm talking about what I have my feelings of when I've sort of spoken to people. I mean, when the vote came through, I don't think people sort of listened to these little spurious facts coming out and thought, that's how we're going to vote. I think the reasons were quite deep-seated and long time coming, because I've travelled to places where there is large suppression of wages and there's an oversupply of labour. And
an oversupply of labour?
Yeah, I mean,
Where?
I have. Well, I'll put it. It doesn't affect me in what I do, but I have a friend of mine who's Lithuanian, and he helped me on sort of work on my house for a year. He's a good friend of mine. He said, "I cannot wait for Brexit to happen." He said, "I came here 12 years ago, and my pay was £9 an hour, and my rent was £400 a week." He says. Now, and he says, and I was able to keep my job. He says, now my pay is £7.50 an hour, my rent is £900 a week, and they will place me at the top of a hat because there's always someone just waiting around the corner.
£900 a week?
Sorry, I'm talking about a month. I apologise.
Oh, right, okay.
and it was interesting of saying this, and I said, well, you're from Lithuania. How do you feel about it? He says the oversupply of labour from all the new European countries that have come through, and I just think that's very odd.
That's a very odd thing to say, because there can't be an oversupply of labour because we have what's called full employment. So where are all these people that you describe?
Well, when I go round, there's something else which bugs me as well. Is a lot of people say, I hear this little sort of, you hear all these phrases, English people don't want to do these jobs. I do this. English people don't want to do these jobs. But in London, when I go around London, I visibly see flats with one-bedroom flats all around me, and I'm in my road. You have houses with, what would be a 1 to 2 bedroom flat with about 12 people living in it, and they're all working on minimum wage.
Well, that seems an odd thing. How on earth do you know all that? Just by looking at the outside of a building? No. You meet them, you talk to them, you can see it. It's very obvious. Well,
yes.
Okay, well, I've lived in London since 1978, but I must admit that I've never gone up and talked to a house of multiple occupancy just out of curiosity.
In Tottenham, Clapton, Hackney, there are massive overcrowding in some places. But I'm not just... I've just from the little bits that I've seen, and I just think to myself, well, that's it's just an interesting... And you think to yourself,
but what has that got to do with it, though? People are living in bad circumstances. That's always been the case.
There's a part of me which feels that this sort of... It's quite convenient to have all these free movement of labour. It means that a company never has to invest properly in their local area. They never have to really take their time to look after the staff, because if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. We'll just get a whole new.
Well, I agree with all that, but
we'll pay them nothing.
I agree with all of that, but two things. First of all, that's all about to change because everybody's about to get fired by a robot, which won't require. It's true. Half of the population on Earth is about to have their job terminated with great vengeance.
Correct.
Yeah, you've got a very good point. Very
so
good
that
point.
problem is about to be subsumed by another much bigger problem. There's that. Also, I do agree. You're absolutely right that in this country we have a terrible reputation for investing in research and development and investing in staff training and all of that sort of stuff. But as I say, that's about to become not a problem anymore because they won't require people.
Yes, but you can't get away with people feel, and I think it's very strong feeling. And there's another thing which I feel, which people feel very, very strongly about, is that there's a great feeling of feeling unfair. Now I work, there is, when I go to Italy and I go to other places in France, the welfare benefit system is so different. I mean, you go to Italy, there's no such thing as like a welfare benefit system, and you just feel like it's unfair. And it might not be unfair, but there's a great feeling of it being unfair. And when people have
what do you mean unfair? What is unfair?
Like somehow that a group of people from another country who haven't paid into our tax system
can come and take advantage of our welfare system, but they don't.
No, not necessarily take advantage of our welfare system. I won't say welfare system, but come and take advantage of our whole system of everything that we.
Yes, but they don't. I mean, per head of population, they contribute more to the economy than we born and bred Brits do. So this notion that they're dragging us down is 100% false. They're actually buoying us up.
You're probably right, but however, the feeling of being unfair is incredibly strong.
Well, yes, of course it is, because people have got left behind, but people are about to get left behind much more and in much greater numbers. And this feeling of unfairedness, I mean, that has been the case when they closed the pits, when they closed the old British car factories, when they closed the spinning works. Well, every change in the way that we work and in society has always upended people's lives, and they will always feel that it is unfair because it was something that they weren't expecting and it has impacted them negatively. But feeling as though things are unfair and you'd like to turn the clock back ain't going to result in anything positive. That's just wishing on a star. Saul, I've got to go, but thanks for that. That was a good call. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Oh, by the way, I mean, I know this isn't very... Well, it is sort of important. But a certain individual's name has come up in relation to who's going to be the next James Bond. And it's a no from me. Furthermore, it's a no. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Do you mind if I say a few words? Thank you.
Yeah, so Donald Trump has extended the olive branch to the Democrats. No, he hasn't. It's just another episode on Planet Trump. First, he demanded his wall, and they said no. And then he started screaming and shouting, and then they said no. And he stormed out of the room, and they said no. And then he threw himself onto the floor and had a fit, and they said no. And then he shut himself in a room on his own and sulked, and they still said no. And so now he's acting more presidential.
I can be more presidential than anybody.
Yeah, nobody believes you, Donny. God, can you imagine what he'd be like if they actually gave him his stupid blooming wall? He would go on a victory tour of the stupid states. It's kind of their wall is our Brexit. Life hasn't worked out for a considerable number of people, so the reason is a small identifiable group, those people. It's their fault, and we can build a wall, and then your life will be better. Well, every indicator is the opposite of that. It was just a call and response thing that he did to get a cheer at his stupid safe space rallies from the drooling yeehaws and the Make America White Again hats. Immigrant crime. Is anybody actually remotely interested in facts anymore?
No.
From December 2016, a study published in the Journal of Ethnicity in Criminal Justice showed that the US saw a 118% increase in its immigrant population, documented and undocumented, from 1980 through to 2016. Yet, during this same period, the rate of violent crime, homicides, rapes, robberies and assaults, according to the FBI, fell by 36%. Immigrant population increased by 118%. Violent crime fell by 36%. It's a completely manufactured fear. A more recent peer-reviewed study published in March 2017 by the Sociological Quarterly compared all forms of immigration and violence in rural versus urban communities from 1990 through to 2010. The number of foreign-born residents, accounting for many other factors, appeared to reduce violent crime rates in rural areas. In cities, immigration was significantly associated with reduced rates of violent crimes. More immigrants, fewer violent crimes. There's also a study published in February by the Cato Institute, which further rejects the idea that illegal immigration is tied to increases in rates of violent crime. But that don't get crowds cheering at safe space rallies. This study published in February looked at conviction data in Texas, the state with the second largest population of foreign-born residents, for native-born, unauthorized immigrant and legal immigrant residents. The research found that native-born residents were most likely to commit and be convicted of crimes, as in Americans, while unauthorized immigrants saw a conviction rate that was about 50% lower than true blue Americans. If you're American, what you don't want to be surrounded by is other Americans, because that'll get you killed. But you don't want to believe that? Sure, I got another one. There's a Criminology Journal study from March that examines states' reported rates of violent crime and illegal immigration. From 1990 through to 2015, the data found a negative correlation, meaning that the more a population was made up of unauthorized immigrants, the lower the violent crime rate was. But, you know, these are just facts, and nobody's interested in facts anymore. Facts don't get you elected. It's just stoking people's fear. That's all it is. That's all a wall is. It won't work. It won't do any of the things that Donald Trump has said it will. He's lying about that just like everything else.
Oh, shut up!
He just can't help himself. It's the one thing that he's got now. He knows that in just around the corner the economy is going to tank. I mean, he's saddled Americans with unsustainable debt. The Republican Party is always has been about reducing the national debt. We've got to get big government smaller, and we've got to get the debt down. And they're just going on and on and on about it during Barack Obama's reign. You remember Barack Obama, don't you? Back when the world was a saner, less interesting place. And as soon as they're in power, the one thing that they're not remotely concerned about now is racking up debt. It's just how hypocritical these people are is just absolutely staggering. That's what the wall is. It's just a vote getter. It's to persuade people that the problem is not within themselves. It's within the outside forces who are coming to get you. You know, because they're murderers and rapists, and some of them are good people, I suppose. You know what in America you should really be concerned about? Is white people in Make America Great Again hats. White terrorism is what you should really be concerned about. I could give you a list of white terrorism offences, but I've only like a list of all of them over the last 30 years. But I've only got a 3-hour show. You are far more likely to be killed in a terrorist act by a white right-winger in America than you are an immigrant of any stripe. But that don't win you elections. You have to pretend that that's not happening. In fact, you would just ignore it completely and wait for an immigrant crime to come along and then say, aha, I told you so. step lightly over the dozens of dead school children and people coming out of church and all of the other things that white supremacists have been guilty of, and point to the thing that the brown-skinned person did. Double parked over there. Build a wall. William in Newcastle says, I noticed that when Theresa May lost the vote with the largest margin in history, the question in the media was, why does Corbyn not resign? That's true. That's true. He says, do you think Corbyn should resign, seeing that he won the vote with the largest majority ever in the Commons? What a mixed up, screwed up world we live in, eh? Who's been waiting the longest? Norwich. Hello, Toby.
Hello, good evening, Nick.
Toby.
Hello.
Yes, Toby.
Yes, I'd like to respond.
Please speak directly into the phone.
I am.
That's better.
I'd like to respond to a statement you made earlier about people that actually voted to leave willfully ignorant.
Well, all of us... No, I think I was more general than that. I said all of us. All of us are willfully ignorant. Nobody's taken on any fact of any kind whatsoever in the intervening period. That's true, isn't it, Toby?
Well, yes, I would like to make my own statement. But basically, all the politicians, including the Prime Minister, keep on going on about they want to respect the will of the people and they want to respect the result of the referendum. And the only way that I can personally see, and a lot of other people can see, to respect that result is to have a no deal and start from scratch.
Why?
Well, people voted to leave. There wasn't. The question was, do we leave or do we stay?
Yes.
The question wasn't, do we leave half or do we stay half? It was, do we leave or do we stay?
Yeah, but why does that have to be no deal if it would be ruinous to the economy?
Well, I believe that there'll be harder times in the short term? Of course.
Well, what's the short term? What's the short term?
Well, the initial period, maybe...
But what is that?
Maybe 1 year, maybe
a year? 1 year? We can turn it around in 1 year? Really?
I think maybe 1 or 5 years.
Oh, well, now we're up to 5.
But obviously, I do believe the nation is strong enough to bounce back like it has bounced back.
And what gives you that idea?
Well, your favourite subject, history.
History? Well, we used to have an empire. Have we bounced back from losing that?
Well, no, but if we talk about the empire...
That's a dead cat bounce, that, Toby.
At one point in time, the British Empire, I think, was 2/3 of the entire landmass.
Yeah. Well, I'll not quibble with fractions, but go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously...
So how have we bounced back from that?
Progress.
Is that the answer to my question?
Well, I believe it's just national progress.
Well, I don't know what that means. Do you?
Well, evolution, then.
Are these some of the facts that you've learned in the intervening period? Is this what you're regaling me with? Some of the information that you've taken on board?
Obviously, I'm not a politician. I don't say I am. I'm just voicing a personal opinion, which I believe it is voiced by quite a few people. By
you? You're representing yourself, Toby.
Yes, I agree with that then. But whether the vote was won by one person or a million people, but basically the actual Leave side won. Let's say whether it got one extra more vote or a million, it still voted to leave, and that was the will of the people.
And now we know a lot more, or some of us know a lot more than we did then. We have apparently decided that we would prefer to stay. I mean, the majority of the people, in any poll that you'd care to look at over the past at least 6 months or a year, suggests that most people in this country now would prefer to stay. So what do you say to that?
Well, if there was another second referendum, I believe personally that it would make a mockery of the voting process in
Dude, are you paying attention? It is a mockery.
But if we had a second one and it went the other way, then obviously people would want a third one and a fourth one and a fifth one.
Well, not necessarily. You could have it. You could honour the skewed result that we had, and I believe it was skewed by the Russians to the point that the government knows that it was, and it's so embarrassed about it, it won't know what to do about it, to the extent that it refuses to even countenance looking at it. It won't even investigate. Which is a catastrophe for this country, really. The Russians interfered with the future of this country for their own ends, and we won't do anything about it. I mean, what does it take for them to actually come onto our soil and kill people?
Is there any hard physical evidence?
Yes, there is, Toby. Yes, there is. But it's pointless to telling you about it because you will refuse to believe it. So, why bother? You think that the situation we have at the moment is not a mockery. The government's at war with itself. The country's stockpiling food and medicine. The army's on standby to intervene. And ministers are openly fighting with each other. The Tory party's about to split in half. It's going very well.
Like I said, I do expect harder times at the start, right. Obviously.
Yeah. For 1, 5, 10? Should we say 20 years?
No, I don't. Well, I'm not an economist.
No, so you're just guessing. Yeah, you're just making it up. It's wishing that things are going to be okay and assuming that because you wish for something, it actually will happen. Like we're all 3 years old. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday and Saturday night at 10, Nick Abbott, LBC.
This is LBC.
Just me love you long time.
This says, welcome to Nick Abbott's misleading statistics. Now, that's not what they wrote, is it? You clean that up for...
I have slightly edited.
Yeah, okay. Welcome to Nick Abbott's BS statistics. Rude. Hey.
Be polite.
He says, he or she... Well, I'll assume it's a he. Very, very aggressive right from the start. Let's assume that it's a he, shall we? Jam in donuts is down 7%, so therefore car crashes involving cats is up 10%. Yes, that's true. Maybe I read it wrong. Welcome to Nick Abbott's BS statistics. Jam in donuts is down 7%, so therefore car crashes involving cats is up 10%. Yes, that's true. What are you... What?
I think he's making an argument about causation and correlation.
Oh, no.
Because one thing is up, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what caused the other thing to be up.
But in reference to what, though?
Sorry, I think in terms of the immigration and crime.
Oh, the immigration and crime. Seriously, Mr. whoever you are, how can you pick a hole? I just gave you 4 studies that all show a massive decrease in the rate of violent crime when there is an increase in the number of immigrant residents. That's not jam in donuts and car crashes involving cats, you idiot. And I mean that in the nicest and politest possible way. See, it's absolutely pointless talking to people who have decided that they're either in the Jets or the Sharks, because that's what's happened in this, not just in this country, but in America too. It's happening all over the world. I think that we're just around the corner from World War III.
I'll bring us into war.
Because people have just picked sides. I am extremely right-wing or I am extremely left-wing. And anybody that is in one camp hates the ones in the other camp and refuses to countenance any information that comes their way that will dissuade them from the opinions that they have jumped to in an instant with no knowledge of what it is that they're deciding on. I mean, that's just moronic. I gave you 4 studies, peer-reviewed, in quality journals. Information coming from the FBI. You would think that they would know about crime in America. All of them say that the higher increase of immigrants in your community, the lower the likelihood is of violent crime in that community. But you're not prepared to believe that, you tweeter, because you believe Donald Trump's made-up BS about immigrants are going to come and kill you and rape you. But not in that order. But you see what I'm saying? It's absolutely pointless talking to these people because they refuse to take on board any information. They are the willfully ignorant that I was talking about earlier on. It's not just that they're ignorant, it's worse than that. They're willfully ignorant. They refuse to learn. Morons. We're surrounded by morons. And sadly, those are the ones that are shouting the loudest, and we are now being run as a country by those that shout the loudest. Let's have a call in Romford. Io.
Hi. Right. I would try to demonstrate that I am not ignorant. Can I just start by giving you a list of 8 MPs, and then I'll just tell you how this fits in context, please?
Well, can you tell us what it is you're going to say about them before you name them?
All right, okay. So, the day before the vote that Mrs May lost, a group of people known as Remainer Nows from all over the country met up and went to see a group of MPs in Parliament. And basically, we are people who voted Leave in 2016 who've actually changed our minds. And it was really revealing to spend some time with people that were like me, who voted Leave, but now think that was really stupid and we should remain. And the only way forward, really, I see now, is a second vote. And I don't see how we can undermine democracy with more democracy. The only question is, what needs to be the question on the ballot paper so it's fair, so that everybody's views are represented in some way, and then it's a democratic vote. If Leave was to win after that second referendum, I, for one, would support Leave. But I do believe that when I voted for Leave, I did not have enough information. I did not really understand the implications of what I was doing. And since that time, I did something like I went to Amsterdam, and because I got a contract out there.
Oh, yeah.
So in 2017,
Amsterdam.
I voted Leave.
Want to score some pot?
Yes.
I'm a software engineer. So I just got this random call on a Monday. I was sitting on my desk on a Wednesday, and I was working there. And then it kind of all dawned on me. I was a migrant worker. I started to realize that there's lots of benefits and lots of, different things that you get from being part of the EU. So when I started to research it more and more and more and more, I started to realize people like Boris Johnson, people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, people like Nigel Farage were all sort of like just liars. And to be honest with you...
Let's back up just a moment. I think that's a pretty strong contention on your part. Let's say that you disagree with a lot of what they say.
Okay, I'll say I disagree with a lot of what they say, yeah? But you see, what the point I'm trying to say to you, the reasonable people need to stand up now. The reasonable people who voted Leave.
All right, well, let me ask you this, Io. I mean, you've been around, obviously. You've talked to people in various countries and situations and jobs and so on. Do you think that the majority of the people have learned in the intervening period as between the referendum and now as you have?
Do you know what? I'm speaking to a lot of people. Literally, I asked the midwife the other day when she came round if she voted in, 2016. I'm very passionate about it now. So I spoke to a lot of people, and from what I can see, there has been a shift towards people who did vote Leave, who now think we should remain. I've spoken to lots of people, and the way I see it is, Leavers, I'm begging you, as a fellow UK citizen, we need to sort this out. We don't want to have riots or disorder. We just want to sort this out and get over this hump and turn a corner, okay? Yes, there was a vote, but it is clear that Leave wasn't defined. Lots of different flavours of Brexit were floated. We had Norway, we had Sweden, we had Canada plus, we had this, that and the other. Let's be honest with ourselves. Who really knew what WTO was until last week? No one.
People thought it was a wrestling federation.
Yeah, exactly. And now everybody's saying, let's just do this WTO. Let's just do this thing. Every single economist, anyone who's worth anything, the NHS, the people who make cars are telling you, if you do this, then there's going to be massive job losses.
They are. Every single person that you've just said, the people who run cars, who run industry in this country that we rely on, who run banks that we rely on, they're all saying the same thing. Don't go out on WTO rules. Don't crash out with a no deal. All of them. Except for a guy who runs pubs and a fella who has relocated to Monaco for tax reasons.
Can I make one other point, yeah? You know one thing, right? A lot of these people, they do come on the radio and they do sort of like make all these claims. But the thing is, yeah, any time that they're put up against somebody who really knows what they're talking about, they always get shown up. I mean, James O'Brien the other day had a interview with Jacob Rees-Mogg just after the referendum. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's got his own show on LBC, yeah? So he can come on, he can control the conversation. But when he's put up against someone like James, he was asked, yeah, the question that he couldn't ask is, the economist that you are citing that's saying, like, you know, it will be all okay, it was the same economist that said that it would decimate our industries. And the person is just, like, couldn't answer that question. Now, Leave voters, I'm begging you, open your eyes. See what these people are doing.
You're wasting your breath. You're wasting your breath, Io. People have made their decision, and they are going to stick with it for several reasons. First of all, because they refuse to take on any new information, and second, it would be too much loss of face to admit that they made a mistake in the first place.
Look, I made a mistake.
Okay, well then you're being big about it.
I'm stepping forward. I'm saying I made a mistake. I definitely should not voted Leave. We do not want Boris Johnson in the hot. Please, I'm begging you. He lies.
All right. Okay. All right. Good work. Nice talking to you. I got to go, Io. All right. Cheers, mate. I think that we learned one thing, and that one thing is... Warning! If you are a politician, do not sit down and think you're going to get an easy ride with the James O'Brien. I bet Nigel Farage still wakes up in a sweat. Don't you, Nigel?
We are thick, we are stupid.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday and Saturday night at 10, Nick Abbott, LBC. Look, it's 11:30. The news headlines with Zora Solomon.
Donald Trump says he's trying to find a way...
You're wondering what it's all about, and I can't tell you because I don't know myself.
Chris says for years you've argued against short-termism. That's right. But now you argue against the WTO because of fear of short-term economic trouble. Makes no sense. Well, I'm fearful of short-term economic trouble and long-term economic trouble. Because you don't snap out of short-term economic trouble. I'm thinking about economic trouble for the rest of my life. That makes sense. Heather says, why are Leavers so aggressive? Well, fundamentalist Brexiteer ultras seem to be defined by their anger. They're very, very angry. And they think that because they're wishing that something is going to be fine in the end, that will make it so. Like sticking your tooth under your pillow. Always wait till your tooth falls out. Wood Green. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Nick.
Martin.
I voted to remain, but I'm finding this whole argument, even especially with your last caller, and that the bias that seems to happen. That interview that happened with James O'Brien and Jacob, from me looking at it, James O'Brien came across like a stroppy, upset child in that, where he kept huffing, he kept mocking Jacob's way of speaking, whereas Jacob was being quite... I thought he was a class act in that interview.
Right, well, I didn't hear it, so I can't comment.
You must have. How could you have not?
I must have. Well, if you say so.
You're saying, that is one of the most epic interviews I've heard on the station.
Right. Okay. Well, then I'll use our catch-up service.
So what the guy was referring to was, I think Jacob cited an economist called Patrick Minford.
He is very good. I have no idea.
Well, apparently he's messed up before on certain projections.
Oh, are you kidding me? Weather forecasters always mess up, but that doesn't mean to say that we dismiss everything that they say. Of course, scientists mess up all the time, but overall they get things right.
But that's what Jacob was saying. James was.
But that's just such a specious argument. That's absolutely preposterous. That's like saying, well, because the medical profession got something wrong once, I no longer trust the medical profession. I'll treat myself, if you don't mind.
But that's exactly what James O'Brien was trying to argue. Because
right.
Patrick Minford's messed up before. You can't trust anything that he has to say.
Exactly.
Because what James O'Brien does is he just tries to do these gotcha things. And that's what instead of trying to have an intellectual discussion on that, because
I disagree. Have you heard this? Well, see, I can't comment on the interview that you're talking about because I haven't heard it, but my experience of listening to James O'Brien is that he does deal in facts, which discombobulates his interview. Have you heard this interview with Nigel Farage?
Yeah, I did. But what
he took him apart molecule by molecule.
But he was also still looking for that gotcha, and what James does...
Well, it makes no difference whether he does that or not. I mean, you say that about James O'Brien. Every political interviewer is inclined to do just that.
But the
reason that they do that is because politicians don't answer the question for a living.
But here's the thing: if someone like James likes the politician, he goes easier on him. When he doesn't
this is selective hearing on your part, Martin. You just disagree with James O'Brien's position.
No, I don't. I don't disagree. I just disagree that when he doesn't like someone, he looks for a gotcha, and he doesn't have an intellectual interview.
Well, I don't think that is right. It's too sweeping a statement. Just because you didn't like the one interview and that you were on Jacob Rees-Mogg's side as opposed to... Well, you just said that you were.
No, I wasn't. I said Jacob came across more fair. He came across more polite. He was more class in the interview.
No, I think that he uses his upper class mean as a weapon against people.
But that's where you see now you're being unfair.
No, I'm not. I'm being accurate. I know. In my opinion, I'm being accurate. But just being polite does not necessarily mean that you are answering questions and that you are being honest. Politeness can be used as a weapon against the person that you're talking to.
This is the bias that we have on one side of the argument and the other.
It's not a bias. It's factual.
Yeah, Jacob has plenty of facts as well. They both have facts.
No, we're not talking about the content of what it is they're saying. Now we appear to be talking about the way in which they're saying it, and I am telling you that being overly polite in that clipped upper class manner that he has is not necessarily an indicator that he is being honest and truthful.
I never said that's an indicator of him being truthful. I'm saying that both sides have facts, but your side of the argument tends to be if you disagree with someone, you try to make out they're stupid. And James does that same thing. If he disagrees, he tries to make out they're a liar or that they don't have any facts, even when they're telling you facts.
If you are talking to a politician of any stripe, it is quite likely that they are disseminating misinformation. Agreed?
Yeah, with many of them, but I think certain politicians tend to get a following when they do answer questions. And Jacob's one of those where he does seem to answer questions. If we were to talk about Diane Abbott now, who can never answer a question, then I agree with you 100%.
Well, see, that's too sweeping a statement as well. I mean, you're accusing me and James O'Brien of bias, but you are just as guilty when you say that. Diane Abbott has a great long history in politics. At one point, she must have answered a question. You saying that she never answers a question is obviously wrong. Martin, we can go around and around in a tight circle if you like, but let's just agree to disagree. How does that sound? Graham in Crouch End says the government entered into a contract with the people, quotes, "We will implement your decision once in a lifetime," etc. Why don't the Leave lot have a Gina Miller type character who will step up and sue the government for breach of contract? It's a democracy, no? Yeah, but the point that we're dealing with now is yes, leave, but what leave? That would be the point of a second referendum. I mean, you'd have to be off your mind to actually want a second referendum.
We should have a second referendum.
But if we do, then let's have what kind of leave would you like? Not that it would make the blindest bit of difference, because people wouldn't have the faintest idea what they were voting for. I mean, I don't know why I'm suggesting it. You ask people whether they want to leave on World Trade Organization rules or no deal or Theresa May's deal, and they'll say WTO. And you will ask them what that means, and they won't have any idea, not a clue. You'll have people from industries that will be decimated instantly by dealing on the WTO rules who would demand that we deal on WTO rules. Like farmers, for instance. This text says, the main problem with Brexit is the fact that we've got it. It's here and now, and it seems to be affecting the likes of me and you. Makes you think, doesn't it, mate? No. I don't understand what that means. Shall I read it again?
No.
It says, the main problem with Brexit is the fact that we've got it. It's here and now, and it seems to be affecting the likes of me and you. Makes you think, doesn't it, mate? No. No, fortunately, I have no problem in thinking too much. None at all. So, like I said, what a position we find ourselves in. The government's at war with itself. The Conservative Party's about to split in half. Every warehouse in the land is chock full of food that won't go off and medicines that we need. And the army's on standby. Who even knew that we still had an army? Ministers are openly fighting with each other. I'm surprised they aren't punching each other out. How is Brexit going so far?
Fabulous.
And it's funny, journalists keep asking David Cameron whether he regrets calling the referendum, and he keeps saying, no, I do not regret it. He said it was a promise he made, and so it was, it was right and correct. In that manner that he's got. Right and correct to honour his pledge. But that's the wrong question they're asking. They're letting him off the hook. The question is not whether he regrets calling it. The question is whether he regrets making that pledge to call it in the first place. But he keeps insisting he's done the right thing. As the country makes the provision for the military to step in to keep order, as his party looks like splintering into little bits, and another general election is likely to send the Tories into opposition for years to come, he keeps refusing to admit his mistake. What's the matter, Dave? Too much loss of face?
I think this is nonsense.
Hey, we're still not missing you, by the way. In case you were wondering. And if we ever do, we know where to find you. In the shed, where they keep the tools.
Correct.
Meanwhile, the Aid Secretary Penny Mordaunt went public in defence of crashing out of the EU. You know, no deal's better than a bad deal, that old line. I thought Mrs M had tried that on for ages. But it fell out of fashion. Well, fashion's back. It's like 2018 all over again. It's back. And Amber Rudd, the Work and Pension Secretary, hit back at Penny Mordaunt, tweeting a link to the CBI warning about the dangers of no deal to business. But, you know, as the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, only represents 190,000 British businesses and 140 trade associations employing 7 million people, about a third of the private sector workforce, as they are experts in possession of facts, no one is remotely interested in anything they have to say.
Correct.
We would much rather pay heed to the fantastical aspirations of greatness that are being peddled by the self-interested and the non-dom, tax-avoiding super-rich that constitute a suspiciously large percentage of the people that are urging the hardest Brexit. Some Tory MPs insist the EU could be bullied into capitulating to our every demand if we make it look like we're eager to leave without a deal, a sort of Russian roulette brinkmanship. You better give us what we want, or we'll kill ourselves. We'll do it. It's the gift that keeps on giving, ain't it? You know, if it wasn't for that kaleidoscopic clown show going on in America, we'd be the laughing stock of the world right now.
Oh, shut up!
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Thank you, Donny. Thank you for being you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. Or, if you're on Twitter, it's at LBC. Friday and Saturday night at 10. Oh, I must mention my podcast. And you know what? My podcast doesn't have any Brexit in it at all. I mean it. I didn't even mention the B word once. I don't think so. I don't think I mentioned it even once. None of the stories are about Brexit in my new podcast. There's a story about Hazard and Sparkles. There's a call from a very angry vegan and a nice lady who had something to do with the invention of Lycra. And both of those are really great calls. At the end of my new podcast, I'm sticking some of my favourite calls from this show. What else was on there? Oh, plenty else besides. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, you'll find it where they give away a good podcast. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it on our app. If you've got an Apple phone, then the LBC app, it's got the podcast on it there. I don't think it works on Android. It either doesn't or it's just my phone. It's a very old phone. You can find it on all of those things that give the podcasts away. I can't remember the name. Intune, there's one. Oh, there's loads of them. Do an internet search on the World Wide Wait. It's called the Nick Abbot Habit, and I think you'll find it delightful.
The Nigel Farage Show. LBC. This is LBC with Nick Abbott.
Well, the whole world's gone crazy.
Billy says, I was browsing the internet and found out that the Chinese like to give politicians nicknames. Xi Jinping is Big Daddy. Really? Because I thought he was Paddington Bear, which is why they don't show Paddington Bear in China. They banned it. What is it with these thin-skinned autocrats? Theresa May is Auntie May. Vladimir Putin is Pale Moth. Ooh, that's a bit sinister. Justin Trudeau is the Little Potato. Angela Merkel is Silent Granny. And Donald Trump is Donald the Strong. Oh, please. That doughy, soft-headed oaf.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Donald the Strong, do me a favour. He says, don't worry about Brexit. Auntie May will take care of it with help from Donald the Strong. Well, if we're relying on help from that guy...
Ding bong!
Him, then we really are in big trouble.
Whoop-dee-dee scoop poop.
Yeah, exactly. Let's have a call in Enfield. Hello, John.
Hello. Calm down, Nick. You're getting me all excited.
I'm very, very relaxed. Listen to me. I'm like a yoga guru.
Yowza. Okay, then, well, I'll put in a word, if I may. I'll give you an analysis of what's happening at the moment.
Yes, analyse it for me.
What has happened, what has happened is the ship of state has run into an iceberg. The iceberg being the EU, okay? The pound is shrinking like the Titanic did. There's not enough lifeboats.
Is that true? Did the Titanic shrink?
It shrunk.
In water?
Sorry.
What did they make it of? Wool?
Sunk, I'm sorry.
Oh, sunk? Yes.
I haven't got my teeth in at the moment, so I sunk like the Titanic. The pound is sinking like the Titanic at the moment. There's not enough lifeboats to go around. The setup on the Titanic is the same that exists in our society. The establishments always survive.
Yeah, the first class go first, yes.
Exactly, of course. And this is happening. You can relate it directly to what happened to the Titanic. And it's happening in this country now, but politically, through the financial market, of course. There's too many lawyers in Parliament and so on. What we need is absolutely top-notch scientists, particularly that can teach.
Well, see, this is why we have the Lords, because they're supposed to be
so on and things like that.
They're supposed to be experts in their chosen fields,
exactly.
As opposed to our politicians who are just experts in obfuscation.
That's right, putting money in their own pockets.
Well, that's true, yeah. That
yeah,
too.
like bankers and,
the financial finaglers. Mm-hmm.
And so on, and all those type of people. You see, that's the thing that's upsetting our country at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. All of those people. No! Mm-hmm.
And nothing is going to change, believe me.
No, it won't, because the only way that it could change is if the people who would lose if it changed would have to vote for that change. It ain't going to happen.
Exactly.
All right, okay, thanks for depressing us even more. Cheers, John. 0345 6060 973. Phil says, after losing the empire and we became the sick man of Europe, we bounced back by joining the EU. Well, the timeline is correct. We did bounce back after joining the EU, after we were the sick man of Europe. We were the sick man of Europe, and then we became the powerhouse of Europe. Can anybody remember back that far?
No.
This text says the North of Ireland voted 55.8% to remain, but there is no voice in Westminster to speak for us. Well, if there was, we'd be able to detect them in a crowd. Arr, arr, arr. There's plenty of voices. Are you kidding me? There's plenty of voices. They're just drowning out each other, though, that's all. Waving their papers in the air, going, puh! Having a jolly good time of it looks like to me. They all look like they're drunk to me at Prime Minister's Questions. Well, I suppose they start drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning, in readiness, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Bound to be. Check your watches. Raymond says, I'm listening to you from Colombia. Don't you think the Trump's wall will help reduce drugs traffic through the borders? Excellent question, Raymond. And the answer is?
No.
No, because drugs go through ports. And they go through roads that go through the borders. Not port. Well, they go through ports, of course, but they go through what do they call the crossing stations, whatever they call that. Drugs don't go over the wall. I mean, there are fences in some areas of the border, but the drugs don't go through there. They go in cars through legal entry stations, whatever they call that, customs stations, and they go through ports. And these days, people buy them on the internet. Donald Trump's proposing a medieval solution to a modern problem, but that's him all over. I know technology better than anybody in the world. He lied. No, of course it won't. The American legal the CIA and the FBI and and everybody has any, and the tobacco and firearms, what do they call it, the AFT or the TFI or something like that, alcohol, tobacco and firearms, ATF. Those people say that it doesn't come over the border, apart from in legal crossing points, in cars. People aren't running with it across Texas. Of course not. This text says, leave or remain, both options suck. Everyone who voted in the referendum needs their heads checked. Where was the third vote or the fourth vote? Well, you mean question? Where was the third question? Is that what you mean? But he's right about that. We do all need our heads checked. Stamford Hill. Hello, Joseph.
Hey, Nick. This is my first time, actually. I've been listening to you for over 5 years.
Wow. Welcome along.
Yes. And tonight I'm compelled, actually, to call you. You had a caller who said that he made a mistake to voting leave, and he was actually trying to impress you that he knows countries in Europe. I can guarantee you, this guy, he cannot even name 5 countries, or he cannot name 5 European countries. He was trying.
Well, you can't guarantee that.
No, I can guarantee you, because whatever he's saying, I think there are these people who are actually coming and talking about their experts, they know Europe. This guy, he has never even lived. I can tell you by the way he speaks.
No, you can't.
Why not? Why not?
How can you tell whether somebody has left the country by the way they speak?
Listen, the guy is just following the wind wherever the wind is blowing. Now, because he thinks that people are they're anti-Brexit. So if he says he wants to remain, that means he will be listening.
Well, let's get back to it.
Donald Trump, you are the absolute worst. I mean, he came over all presidential, didn't he? He didn't stray from the script. Somebody must have one of those dog collars that shocks you. Must have put one of those around him and threatened him not to stray from the script, because he didn't write any of those words. And so he was all, he was trying to be presidential. Oh, if only that had worked. He was trying to be presidential.
I can be more presidential than anybody.
Yeah. But his message was exactly the same. He just wasn't shouting it, that's all. His message continues to be, they're murderers and they're rapists, and some of them are nice people, I suppose. If we build a big, beautiful wall, which is not a wall now, it's a fence, and it's a see-through fence, and it's made of steel, and it's made of concrete, and I don't know, it could be just a line in the sand, but if we build a wall of some sort, the crime rate will go down. The obvious inference being that immigrants are causing crime. But all of the evidence suggests the contrary. It's not true. But he just will not deviate from that script, because telling white people that white people are causing the crime and that white people are going and killing the members of the community, and you're more likely to get killed by a white person, ain't going to get white people to vote for you. And so you say, forget all the step over the bodies of all the people that white people killed, and I'll show you a brown person over here who's just stolen a bottle from a liquor store. Just ignore all of the dead bodies in front of you, because they were killed by white people, so that's okay then. If it was killed by a white person, then it's too early to talk about gun control. It's truth. If he was really interested in protecting the American people, then he'd talk about gun control. But the gun lobby gave him so many millions of dollars to fund his campaign, and he's never going to say that. Because he's only interested in himself. You know, that fella just before the news who was saying that, black Britons have a much better time in this country and, everything's fine. There's no racism here. They've managed to kick racism out of football and the country. Great success. Well, there was this thing that came out just the other day. Black Britons and those of South Asian origin face shocking discrimination in the labour market at levels unchanged since the late 1960s. A study by experts. Oh, it's experts. I wish I'd known that ahead of time. I could have dismissed it out of hand. A study by experts based at the Centre for Social Investigation at Nuffield College, University of Oxford, found that applicants from minority ethnic backgrounds had to send 80% more applications to get a positive response from an employer than a white person of British origin. They just go by your name. So tell me again about how everything's improved. This text says, David Cameron is the only honourable politician left in this who still believes in democracy and believes the people's voices should be heard and respected. Oh, please. What are you talking about? The only reason that he posed the question in the first place is because he thought we'd give him the different response. If he knew that it was going to go this way, he would never have asked us. What are you on about? Deluded. Crystal Palace. Hello, Jack.
Oh, hello, Jack. Hello, Nick. I wanted to ask, are you related to Ross Abbott by any chance?
I wish I was.
You know, the comedian? No? Okay. What it was about was...
Are you related to Jack Sparrow by any chance?
Yeah, remotely.
Right.
Yeah, we wing it when we have to. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's... What's in... remain and leave? I mean, remain... What does remain mean, would you say? Trying to define it, what people mean by it. What does... If the referendum, the result had been remain, what does remain mean? It means to stay in. So leave means to be out. It's as simple as that. In and out. Remain means in. Leave means out. So that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? You think?
Well, what is the point you're making, Jack?
Well, the point is, if we can't agree on very
it's like
basic...
a speaking dictionary on the phone.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, if we can't agree on very simple, basic language, then how can people communicate? There's no agreement, and it just degenerates into shouting matches of people showing no respect to each other and no respect for the language. It's just, and people that try to exploit, things to their advantage, in the face of common sense. Like, what does the word mean? Leave is out and remain is in. And the referendum, it was not what they call it. It wasn't subject to a deal. It was quite clear, remain or leave. So I think hopefully that will sort of, clarify things. But to go on to...
No, it doesn't clarify anything. What are you even hearing yourself? What are you talking about, man?
Well, this is it.
Leave means leave, but what kind of leave is what we're discussing now?
No, leave means out.
Yes, but what kind of out do we want?
What out is out?
No, it isn't.
Out is out.
Oh my God! Have you paid attention at all? Have you been in a coma for 3 years?
Yeah. I'm listening very closely. You go in front of a judge or a policeman comes to a property, and I told this guy to leave, and he says to you, "Well, what do you mean by leave?" Or the villain says, "What do you mean? But could you clarify? Could you?"
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Jack, because this is one of the most asinine conversations I've had in the 3 years that we've been discussing this, and that is a packed list. I've got to tell you, you are right there at the top. I'll say you're number 7 with a bullet. Get Alan Freeman on the phone. He can do a countdown for us. Sound of the swinging cymbals. Let's hear it right now. Hey! I miss Alan Freeman. I wish he was still doing a show. Don't you? Pauline says, Cameron should regret the referendum. It shows how arrogant he was, as he gave no thought to the possibility of people voting for it. So there was no plan for it. Had to run away, tail between legs, arrogant. Well, yeah, arrogant does define him, and many others of his ilk. I think they teach it to you in that place, assuming you don't arrive with it already instilled within you. Lenny says, if wool shrinks in water, then why don't sheep shrink when they get wet in the rain? Or is that why they hide when there's a rainstorm? That's an excellent question. How come wool shrinks? Like woolen socks, they shrink to the point that I can't get my feet in them anymore, which I find very, very irritating. And a jumper, I also find it irritating that you've got to take things to a dry cleaners. And they're lying about that, by the way. There's nothing dry about it. It's liquid. They squirt liquid up it. What's dry about that? There's another set of people that are disseminating misinformation. Liar! But I find it really aggravating that you've got to take anything to the dry cleaners. And I usually buy things that you can't, that don't require it. Because I'm doing my bit to protect the environment.
Groovy.
Yeah, plus it costs. And if you've got to dry clean your woolen socks, well, that's just ridiculous. But why doesn't the wool on sheep shrink? As soon as you take it off a sheep, it shrinks. Stupid sheep. Mary says, unfortunately, you can't educate the willfully ignorant. We're all doomed. Maybe we can borrow Donald Trump's imaginary wall to hide behind for the next 2 decades. No, I think we want to build that wall around him. Would be a good idea. Just present yourselves to the local authorities, Donald. Assume the position. Brighton. Hello, Kevin.
Hello.
Kevin.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Kevin.
Yes, how are you? Very well, thank you.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I just want to take on board what's just happened. He asked me how I was, and then answered his own question. Apparently, I'm doing fine. I'm glad to know that, Kevin. What else have you got?
Obviously. Well, Nick, I totally agree with you, mate. And I'll tell you what, no. I do. 100%, my friend, I'm sorry to say. 100%. I mean, I cannot believe these Brexits. Yeah.
Yes.
What are they thinking?
Oh.
What are they thinking?
I don't know what anybody is thinking anymore. I think that people aren't thinking.
They don't even know where they're going.
I think I don't know about you, Kevin, but I've met people, and I think they have the intellectual capacity of a mollusk.
Well, a mollusk has got more, I think, because at least it knows what it's eating. Well, does it?
Do they?
I don't know.
Do they know where they're going to, mollusks? That's my question. Thanks a lot, Kevin. I have no idea what that was, but it fits right in. I've read all of those, so I'll just delete them while you wait. Ken says, I have a novel Brexit idea. Let's have a referendum on whether we should... Oh, that's not a novel idea, Ken. Let's have a referendum on whether we should hold another referendum. I must have read that dozens of times. Not novel. You lied about that. Zach says, do you realise that Friday, March the 29th at 11 p.m, when we leave the ew, will be in the middle of your show? How ironic. Will there be cake and ice cream? Can't wait for it. I shall be sipping my champagne and laughing at every single Ramona, says Zach. Well, I hope that you are not financially inconvenienced in any way, shape or form, Zach. I hope it doesn't happen to you. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Now, I do want to talk about, not at length, but somebody's head has reared up in relation to who's going to be the next James Bond. And I have to smash these rumours down. It can't go that way. So I'll talk about that eventually, after I've dealt with all of the other important issues. 0345 6060 973, Friday and Saturday night at 10, Nick Abbot, LBC.
Brexit. Follow it live.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
Yeah, some people you just can't reach. 0345 6060 973. Steve says, so I've been listening to your show for the last 3 years, and only now do you choose to tell me that you're not Alan Freeman. I hate to break the news to you, but he's gone. All right? I used to work playing rock and roll music.
Rock and roll!
And I started drifting into an Alan Freeman impression, and then I was doing whole shows just doing a hymn. I just sort of segged into it. Well, it's a great way to do a show. Scott says, you and James O'Brien... Oh, God, here we go. Grip onto something firm, everybody. It's another complainer.
Stop whining.
You and James O'Brien use the radio as a way of spouting your lies and communist tripe. Communist tripe. Communist tripe. Is there any point in reading on?
No.
He says, WTO is fine. Half the world trades on it. You know, as in UNO, you know that you won't... What? WTO is fine. Half the world trades on it. You know that, but you just won't say it because it doesn't fit your agenda. I think isn't the only country that trades solely on WTO rules Mauritania or some place like that nobody could... Even if I put a gun to your head, you wouldn't be able to locate it on a map. I think Singapore, which is just basically a large port with a bank attached, trades on much of their whatever it is they do for a living. I think they beat people for a living and freak out about drugs to a berserk extent for a living, or whatever else it is they do. They things come in and out of their ports and they take a slice. I think much of their trade is WTO, and almost nobody else on earth. Solely on WTO rules. So what are you talking about, Scott? I should have stopped reading it. Communist tripe. Communist. God. I've almost read it all, I expect. The Isle of Wight. Hello, Billy.
Hello, good evening, Nick.
Billy.
Yeah, I'm not very happy with you, Nick.
Oh, no, I haven't made a mistake again, have I? Why do I keep doing that?
I normally always enjoy listening to you, but I've got to say, I didn't like what you said about Brexit, Nick. You was mentioning about Leave. What type of Leave votes people voted for? If I'm getting the right flow of things here. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, I wanted to call up really to say that you could argue what type of anything people want in any type of election till you're blue in the face. I mean, you've only got to look at the Green Party for that. You know,
the Green Party. What have they done now?
I mean, well, let's say someone votes for the Green Party. Are they voting for a Baroness Jenny Jones Brexit Green Pie? Are they voting for a Jonathan Bartley Green Pie? Are they voting for a Vix? Sorry, not Vix. That's the name of the candidate on the Isle of Wight, believe it or not. Are they voting for a Jonathan Bartley Green Party?
Well, I'll tell you why I voted Green.
What are they
Shall
voting
I?
For?
Shall I tell you why I voted Green?
Yes, please do.
Because they were none of the above.
But see, this is what I mean. See, you voted for the Green Party for that reason, but there are plenty of others out there that voted...
Well, they probably read the manifesto and thought, yeah, that sounds about right, and voted for that.
Well, I think it's already been proven, really, isn't it, that a lot of voters don't tend to read the manifestos.
Well, they may have glanced at the leaflet that came through the door. I mean, some of the leaflets that come through your door have a picture of your local representative of them that makes you drop the leaflet with shock. And you think, oh, well, I need not read a single word of that. I don't like the look of that person, so whoever he or she is representing does not get my vote.
Yeah, I mean, I do see your point there, and I do feel that, you know, that is valid. But then again, I suppose if you look at what the government sent out, you know, that pamphlet that they spent £9 million on, it did actually state in there that we would leave the single market, I believe it is. So it's not as though Brexit voters who decided to do what you're suggesting, which is read leaflets, weren't exactly informed. I mean...
Well, now, I disagree with you there, because I think that even now, if I went into the street with a clipboard and asked 1,000 people what the single market was, I bet I would get a handful of people who actually knew what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't know. I'm not an expert on the EU by any stretch of the imagination, and, you know, I could probably just about ruffle up what I think the single market is, like a lot of people. But then that's politics for you overall. I mean, what I believe in, and this is why I wanted to call up, Nick, because... But
on that issue, it doesn't really matter whether you know the intricacies of it. But, leaving the single market can be done in a variety of ways. It can be done by having a deal which props up our economy in some way and goes a way to alleviate the concerns of the people on whom we rely for our income, or we can just crash out and cross our fingers and hope for the best and expect it will work out fine because we're British.
See, I think these are sentiments that just don't help in the political debate. The words like crashing out.
I'm not helping? Oh, no.
Well, the thing is, do you know what the IMF said prior to the referendum, Nick? They said that this is the vote. I'm talking about the vote, not actually Brexit happening. The IMF, and you can Google this, it's on a number of news outlets that are very reputable. They said that the housing market and the stock market would crash immediately after the Brexit vote happened. That's not after Brexit happened, that's after the vote happened. So all these words like crashing out, it really I'm a liberal Brexiteer.
But the pound did crash.
The pound did crash, but the stock market and the housing market, which I've just mentioned, didn't. Now, what I'm saying is words like crashing out and it's going to be doomsday. I'm not saying that you're saying that as such, but you did say crashing out.
Well, I mean, I've got here the IMF. The IMF says the UK economy will rapidly start to contract in the event of a disruptive exit. So I'm not sure that you're right.
Well, they also said, and you can look at a number of articles going back to 2016, that the stock market and the housing market would crash overnight after the vote to leave. That's not after Brexit.
I'm not sure of that. I don't recall ever reading that, so I dispute. I dispute your assertion.
But what I'm saying is, your listeners can look at that information for themselves.
So, is your contention, Billy, that because economists once got things slightly wrong, that or even very wrong, that we should no longer listen to economists?
No,
or experts of any kind.
I certainly didn't suggest that, and I think what you're doing.
So what's your point, though? Well, what's your point, though? You said that the IMF once got something wrong, and
See, now you're talking over me, and that doesn't help, Nick.
Oh God! Well, don't get an attitude about it, Billy. I'm saying that you said that the IMF once got something wrong. What's your point?
No, what I'm saying is I'm quoting what you said, which is the word crashing out, and I'm saying that sentiments like that, and I've said that twice now, so your listeners, can make their own mind up. But I'm saying that words like that don't help, and I use the example of the IMF in that particular situation as an example. If you want another example, I can give you one.
But when you say don't help, are you saying ruinous to the economy, or just poison the discussion?
Maybe I know you're short for time, so maybe we can end on a positive note. What I'm saying is words like that don't help.
But what do you mean by help?
Well, if you'd let me finish, Nick, maybe I can explain to you. So I'm quite a liberal Brexiteer, and I think that the 48% need to be equally as represented as the 52%. And using strong words like crashing out simply doesn't help, because I'm one of these...
You keep saying don't help. Explain explain what you mean.
So it's exaggeration, because the IMF said very clearly before the referendum...
Oh, God, please don't repeat that again.
OK, well, I won't repeat that one. I used the example that George Osborne gave before the election, which was that every household...
the very popular George Osborne.
£4.5 worse off. And see, even you think that's ridiculous. So you prove my point.
I don't.
Well, no, you do.
Now you're putting words in my mouth.
Okay, well, now you know what it feels like.
Well, but you don't win an argument by doing the exact same thing that you just accused me of, telling me it was the wrong thing to do, Billy. Jeffrey says, why don't you sod off to an EU country then if it's all so fabulous? You see, we are just surrounded by morons. We're following Jeffrey as a country. It's excruciating. If you don't like if you don't think the way I think, says Jeffrey, then you should leave the country. He represents the people who are shouting the loudest. We're surrounded by them. What's instructional is that now we know they're there. Like previously to all of this. Thanks very much, David Cameron. Previously we were blissfully ignorant that we were surrounded by such people. Trolls. Back under your bridge, Jeffrey. Jack from Worthing says, a three-way vote by a referendum is the only way forward. Leave with no deal, Remain, or May's deal. I voted out and I wish I hadn't. I'm so fed up with it all. I just want to get back to going on holiday without the terrible exchange rate. Yeah. People don't think that their lives have been impacted in any way, shape or form, like that last caller would assert, but they have. It's just that you don't notice it. It didn't happen on day one, and it wasn't presented to you as a consequence of the vote. But it has happened. And the prices in stores may not have skyrocketed. They might not have gone up by 10% or more as the pound has gone down. That's because stores have absorbed the higher costs because they're in a price war with each other. But that won't last forever. Ruth in West Hampstead said, is the last caller aware how much money was pumped into the economy after the vote by Mark Carney to stop the exact scenario he's talking about? Well, let's not get bogged down in facts, Ruth. Nobody's interested in those anymore. But I did like his superior attitude, which fits right in on the Isle of Wight, by the way. I thought that in the brief time that I spent there, a couple of days last summer, I thought they're all a bit... the entire island was a bit up itself, I thought. Hey, I'm glad that you kept that one right at the top there, by the way. I mean, I've read it. Normally you take that off the screen. Why don't you highlight it and put it up in red? Why don't you sod off to an EU country then, if it's all so fabulous? Oh, my God. I'd love to know what you do for a living, Jeffrey, but I'm frightened that you might say you're a teacher. 0345. Please tell me you don't vote. Please tell me you haven't reproduced. 0345 6060 973, text 84850, email nicka@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday and Saturday night at 10, Nick Abbott, LBC. It's 12:30, the news headlines with Zora Solomon.
President Trump has proposed what he's
Would you mind telling me what this is all about?
Yes, sure, why not? You know what we're going to get next? A general election.
Oh, no.
Ministers have warned that a once unthinkable general election may be the only option left for Mrs. M. And it could be as soon as February the 28th.
What?
Yeah. It's like a month away. And David Cameron would like it to be known that he still doesn't regret calling a referendum. It's all your fault, David Cameron.
I think this is nonsense.
Apparently there's a growing feeling around the cabinet table that an early poll could happen. And you know what? If Theresa May has ruled it out, then I would bet on it happening. It's all about the deadlock. You see, nobody can agree with anybody else about anything anymore. And without having a second referendum, which is another thing that she's ruled out, it's about the only way to break the deadlock. But it would mean that the Labour Party would have to crystallise what they believe in, rather than just disagreeing with what Mrs. M says. They'd have to present a policy of some sort. And they ain't got much time to come up with one. One source claimed that Mrs. May's election manifesto would be formed from an updated Brexit plan. Yeah, it'll be an updated Brexit plan, which will be the same plan as before, but with Plan B written on the front of it. And the public could choose that, or choose to get Uncle Jezza to have a go at it. I mean, he couldn't do a worse job than this lot, could he? 2/3 of MPs would have to vote for an election under the Fixed-Term Parliamentary Act, but at least 2/3 of MPs want someone else in charge, so it's not out of the question. And of course, Mrs. M has ruled out a vote before 2022, but she's also said that she also said the exact same thing before the 2017 election. You remember? She said no, 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 and then
yes,
yeah. But don't rule it out. It may be where we're going. Civil servants have been ordered to draw up plans for another election in February, in case the Prime Minister decides to go to the country. God, if I was her, I would have left a long time ago. How's being Prime Minister, Mrs. M?
Oh, fabulous.
At least 9 ministers, including 3 in the cabinet, have told their constituency associations to prepare for an early general election. The whispering has started. I think we can start to prepare for deciding whether we will bother to vote in the next general election. Start deciding now, before it's too late. Let's have Harrow. Sebastian.
Hey, Nick. Hi.
How you doing?
Crikey, I've been waiting all week for your shows starting on Friday. So much has happened, and I was thinking, oh, what would Nick say? What would Nick do? Oh, my God, this is really crazy. And so much has happened, I couldn't believe that you're probably going, come on, I want that microphone, give me the microphone.
I'm just sitting at home agog, just trying to keep up. The noise in my mind's like... Yeah, I'm all of a confusion.
What I ran to say was that when somebody comes on the line and starts using examples of other countries, that in that country they can do this, and the other country they can do X, Y, Z, they should look at the regime of that country. They should look at how somebody might be living in that area, in that country, to say what kind of lifestyle they are. They're nothing like what we have in the UK.
What is it that you're talking about specifically?
Oh, the Singapore example. Somebody saying, "Oh, we can deal with them," and they have completely different regimes. They won't let you spit gum out on the street. They'll have you arrested and put you in prison.
Yeah, well, never mind the sort of medieval way that they have with crowd control over there and controlling what individuals can say and do and watch and touch and squeeze. Never mind about that. Singapore is a completely different economy than ours. I mean, Singapore is just a port. That's pretty much all they do. They do a port. They do ports and they do tax haven racketeering. But we're not like that at all. We're a giant country that's all spread out. Singapore is about half the size of London with 7 million people in it. It's packed together, whereas we have vast stretches of countryside with nobody in them.
But there's no room in this country for any more.
Well, that is just preposterous. I mean, if you just take a train anywhere, you'll go through huge stretches of land that don't have a single house on it.
Exactly. My point. You've got to be looking like for like. Look at like for like, and then you can make some kind of reasonable comparison. Somebody who's a Brexiteer comes up and doesn't give a reasonable argument. They rabbit on about the will of the... If I ever hear that ever again, I might...
Well, don't say something you were going to regret, Sebastian. Your head will explode. No, don't promise us that.
I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. But anyway, let's hope for the best. And if we can't hope for the best, then they deserve what they get, honestly.
Well, there is a bit of me that thinks that a lot of the people that are complaining the loudest that want the hardest Brexit are also the people, and this is also true for Donald Trump, they're also the people that are going to be suffering the most from that scenario. They don't know it because they refuse to take on board any information, but it's true. Thanks a lot, mate. I've got to go. Cheers. 0345 6060 973. Like the people in agriculture, for instance. What's the point? They won't listen, so why bother? But there is just a bit of me that thinks, you know what? Okay, well, I hope it is a. Well, that caller was in a high state of agitation that I used the phrase "crashed out," as though I'm the person that invented that. And it's unhelpful, whatever that means. As though everybody else's language is tempered. But if we do leave without a deal, then I think you'll find that the people that are most vociferously for that scenario will also be the ones that suffer the greatest from it. But they don't know that, because they refuse to take on board any information. They believe what they believe, based on no facts of any kind whatsoever, and that's the end of it. No thought has gone into that opinion, and no discussion will be entered into. It's staggering. We're just being blown about like a rudderless ship by whoever is shouting the loudest. Catherine in Guildford says, these twits who say don't like it, then leave and... Oh, don't like it and then leave and go to the EU, fail to realise that they have voted to remove that option from us by taking away freedom of movement. Absolute twits, says Catherine in Guildford. That's right. I can't go and move to the EU. Mansour says these leavers need to realise that there is no empire anymore. It's a global village now, and no country can stay isolated anymore. They are anti-immigration. Migration was and always will be around. If the people who emigrated from this island to the rest of the world over the last few centuries were to return, this island would sink. These hypocrites can't see the other side of the coin. There's another side to the coin? It was me thinking it was all edge. 0345 6060 973. Let's have a call in Brighton again. Matthew.
Hello.
Matthew.
Hello. You all right?
Yes, good, thanks.
I think I've got a solution for everything.
Oh, well, I wish you'd called earlier, like 3 years ago.
I should have tried. I hope you're having a good day. Think pie in the sky here.
Pie.
But also, I don't believe any of this could ever happen, by the way. I don't think it's very pragmatic at all. So let's imagine that we could have... everyone that voted leave, we go back to the polls, but we're not actually at the polls. Like, we go back there, but you put your name down this time. So everybody that voted to leave can live by the rules of leave, and everybody that voted to remain gets to live by the rules that remain. So I can enjoy, decent priced wine, and then everybody else listen to loop music. That's what it's essentially.
Loop music.
Quite reasonable, isn't it? And then we'll have I know people don't like ID cards, but we could do it that way, and then we could see how it works out for everybody. That'd be reasonable. So it's slightly keeping up the divided country. An alternative would be another option. This would be a bit like babysitting a divorced couple. So 1 year we do leave, 1 year we do remain. 1 year we do leave, 1 year we do remain. And after 4 years we'll have a little chat and say what works out best. I think they're two options that can never.
Yeah, well, okay. So you're positing a hypothetical scenario, which would be amusing and interesting. I'd pay a deal of money to watch that. Is it on Netflix? But it's not actually based in reality, unfortunately. I suppose what we could do is build a wall around London, because London overwhelmingly wants to stay in the European Union, and then whatever money London makes, London gets to keep. How does that sound? And Clacton and Rutland and all points in north, south, east and west that voted to leave, they can keep whatever money is created in their communities. And then everybody will be happy. Emmanuel in Edmonton says there are people who voted to remain who didn't know what the single market is. Since finding out what it is, they don't want to stay in now. They think it shackles us. Yeah, well, that is a way of thinking about it, I suppose. Rick says, why are all these Ramonas anti-royalists as well? Bet you are. Bloomin' traitors. No sense of being English. Would you move to Europe? Would you do that for me, lovey? Would you? Would you? What on earth would Rick do for a living, do you think? I mean, should we hazard a guess? Let's hope it's not important. It's just amazing. It's like lifting up a rock and seeing a community of life forms that you had some inkling that were there, but you didn't really know the extent of it. Get David Attenborough on the phone and he can talk to us about the extent of it. Not picking up, you say? Well, keep trying. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday and Saturday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC.
Coming up at 1 on LBC. This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet @LBC. Text 84850.
Come on, we're running late!
Late breaking news, by the way. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat from the great state of California, said that reports of a deal to be proposed by his chumpiness to end the record-long partial government shutdown was a non-starter. She said no, Donnie. She said Democrats were hopeful that the president was finally willing to reopen the government and proceed with much-needed discussion to protect the border. Unfortunately, initial reports make clear that his proposal is a compilation of several previously rejected initiatives, each of which is unacceptable and in total do not represent a good faith effort to restore certainty to people's lives, she said in a statement. I mean, what Donald Trump has offered is that DACA thing, the deferred action for childhood arrivals. I'll let them stay for another 3 years, and then what happens? These are people that were brought into the country by their parents as children and who have grown up in America from baby age in a lot of cases. So America's the only place they know. And the Republicans naturally want to kick them out because it plays well with the drooling yeehaws and the Make America White Again hats. And he said, oh, well, I won't chuck them out for 3 years. But then I'll think about it. Now can I have my wall? And Nancy Pelosi, she said no. And Donald Trump whining about it. Okay, that's a bit strong. Donald Trump is not a whiner. There's no evidence to suggest that he is.
I'm a whiner, and I keep whining and whining.
Apart from that, I don't think Donald Trump is a very nice person.
Donald Trump is a very nice person.
Well, there's another thing I got wrong. God, when will I ever get anything right? So she said no, Donnie.
No.
No. That's what she said. And Donald Trump issued a statement which was I'm sitting here all alone in the White House. Steve says, Winston Churchill once said, a 5-minute conversation with the average citizen shows you why decisions should be made by politicians. Spot on. I've met people and they shouldn't be allowed to operate heavy machinery. This text says, was this really all over blue passports and straight bananas? Thatcham. Hello, Andy.
Hiya.
Isn't Thatcham the place with the car alarms?
Yes.
Or is that coincidental?
Correct, yeah.
Right.
Well, no, it's correct, yeah. That's right. That's Thatcham.
Well, at least we've learnt one thing on this show.
Excellent. Now, as brilliantly witty and vividly intelligent as you clearly are, Nick, I'd love you to educate me and tell me why. And you are, and I believe you are.
Well, I'm not, but anyway.
You to educate me. No, come on. I'd love you to educate me.
Yes.
And tell me why you're so adamant on remaining against leaving. I'm asking you to educate me now.
Well, it's not a question of education. You just want me to answer the question. Why am I a Ramona?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. I just don't think it's in our best interests to upend the apple cart when things were going on along relatively smoothly. I mean, relatively is a relative term, of course. I mean, we had our ups and downs, much of which was our and America's bankers' personal responsibility. And the entire world is still trying to climb out of the hole. Probably never will, in truth, because our debt continues to increase.
Definitely.
And the next recession is just around the corner. This has to be the worst time in the last 40 years to go through this scenario that we have inflicted upon ourselves.
Okay, fair enough. So you don't see it as being beneficial to the UK at all, just detrimental if we was to leave?
Economically speaking, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
But then I'm not alone. The vast majority of people in possession of knowledge in this regard would agree with me. There's very few people who don't, such that most leavers can name all of them.
Okay,
there's the guy who makes purple vacuum cleaners, who's just opened a factory in Singapore. There's the guy who runs a chemicals company who, by all accounts, has taken up residence in Monaco. And there's a guy who runs a business that you presumably won't be affected one way or the other by leaving the EU. In fact, people might actually be encouraged to drown their sorrows in his pubs. I mean, those are the people that you can think of, apart from the politicians, on who are betting their careers on it. But the number of people that think that it would be ruinous are they're never ending. Okay.
Clearly I put my cross in the wrong box. There you go, everyone. You heard it live on air. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Andy. Brian in Gloucester says, you and many of your fellow presenters should stick to presenting the show. We don't want to hear your opinion on any topic. Well, you're in the wrong place, mate. That is the show. This whole Brexit debacle, he says, would have been long over and completed if you lot of Remainders accepted the outcome of the referendum. But no, you just handed negotiating powers to the EU. Oh, I see. It's my fault. Oh, Brian, seriously, mate, what are you talking about? Shall I pick apart each sentence?
No.
What's the point? Stick to presenting the show. We don't want to hear your opinion on any topic. But that is the show. This ain't the BBC, Brian. This is LBC. And you can tell the difference because that extra B stands for... Boring! Peter says lefties know they must discredit anyone who is talking the truth. It is standard lefty behaviour. They rely on a certain number of people believing anything they say, so they can't afford to let anyone prove them wrong on anything. It really is like picking up a stone at the bottom of your garden, isn't it? It's like, cool, look what's under there. It's excruciating. And there seems to be no end of them. Has anybody agreed with me yet on this show? Exactly. Well, either everybody is wrong or I am. I know I've made my mind up. 0345 6060 973. Hey, have I talked about the James Bond thing yet?
No.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I'll stick it in the next podcast. Have I mentioned that I've got a podcast out?
Yes.
I've got a brand new podcast out. This is the first one this year. I took a little while off for Christmas because I did a lot of shows in the row and it was very, very tiring.
Stop whining.
So I've got a new podcast which is just, it's hours old. It's still fresh. Smell it. Touch it. Feel it. Squeeze it. And you'll find it where they give away good podcasts. You'll find it on iTunes. You'll find it in our app if you've got an Apple device. I don't think it works on Android, unless it's just my phone. You'll find it in... I can't remember the names of them, but there's loads of them. Just do an internet search on Nick Abbot Habit. And the latest one has got no Brexit in it. Zero Brexit. There's no Brexit in my podcast. It lasts for 30 minutes, and I think you'll find it amusing and a delight. The Nick Abbot Habit. Let's have a call in Lewisham. Barry.
Good morning.
Barry.
Very, very quickly.
Yes.
Like a nerd, I decided to look up the Leave manifesto. I thought, what is it that Leave has wanted? What is it they actually voted for? Interestingly, it says in there that they may not even need to use Article 50 and that the whole purpose of Leave is to seek a new UK-EU treaty. There's never a point in there where it says that they're going to leave with no deal. It never ever says that. I don't know why they think that they voted for no deal, because it didn't say that in their manifesto.
Which manifesto was that? Was that Leave means leave or be leave or which one?
No,
was
this was Leave.eu, the official manifesto.
Okay, right, all right.
Yeah, the official manifesto.
And it doesn't say anything about no deal?
No, it doesn't. It says...
Does it say anything about World Trade Organization?
No, it mentioned... No, it doesn't really say what. It says, we'll be bigger on the international stage. We'll get back our powers. It briefly mentions World Trade Organization, but it says that there's a free trade zone. It comes up with some balmy stuff. So there's a free trade zone from Iceland to Russia.
Great. We're going to rely on Russia.
Yeah, well, up to the Russian borders, there's a free trade zone, and we
it's curious how Russia keeps coming up over and over and over in this. It's just a little bit suspicious, but never mind. We'll just let that go. All right. Well, thanks for the good news, Barry. So now do you know what you voted for? We voted to get our power back and bestride the world like the colossus that we once were, because we'll fight them on the beaches and we'll fight them in the air. Who knows what might happen between now and 10 o'clock next Friday? I mean, it just fair boggles the mind thinking about it, don't it? But whatever it is, we'll chew it up and spit it out then, eh? Now, if you stick our app up your device, then you can catch up on this super show or any of the ones over the last week on our catch-up feature. The app is available for iPhone and Android, and you can find it on the internet. Have you seen the internet? Oh! It is a delight. They got puppy dog and pussycat videos you can watch forever. Coming up, it's Steve Allen who will set you straight at 5 o'clock. But right now,